Okay, so I just want to briefly show you an example or a series of examples of some high quality master plans, and then I will even put some examples of master plans at the end of this as well as what I'm about to go through here. But this is I think this is example of four different good master plans that you can kind of mimic your style around for when you're doing your master plan, how their programs link up, and then all of their kind of illustrative diagrams explaining the master plan. So if you look on the screen here, there are four different sites across Galveston Island. I'm just gonna show you a couple of them, and then the rest you can kind of look on your own. Um, but one of them is an urbanized area, so an area that's already developing, an area uh, that is going to development. So to develop, it's in transition. There's a coastline area, like a beachfront area for recreational purposes that we did a plan for. And there's an area right beside a national and state park that we did a plan for. So there's four different master plans in this, and each one of these master plans has kind of a different strategy, four different strategies applied to them. And over here is the program for each one of these master plans. And then basically the color links to exactly what the strategy is here, right? So these are the four areas. So this is Western Galveston Island. The project was from a couple of years ago when we were looking at what's called feasibility of what's called the Ike Dike, where they put down this giant seawall clay core dune basically along the edge of Galveston Island here. But there's four different sites in Galveston that we did master plans for. And these are again the coastline, transitional, urbanized, and minimal impact area. And these are the shapes of each site. Okay, so I want to kind of give you a little bit of what we were looking at here. So we did some analysis on the population, the living here, and the total amounts of units. So total amounts of housing units, the land value, and the proposed land use. So they're different across each site. Obviously, there's no housing units in this area because it's all kind of giant beach sand. But the idea was to show without the dune, this is a 50-year flood, and this is a 100-year flood. So most of this whole site's underwater. 150-year flood and storm surge covers the entirety of the site. But if you put the Ike Dike down, right, we prevent around $250,000 of damages without any buildings on it, right? Um, and so these are some sections that we drew across with the dune without, and then we're showing exactly how we could integrate the dune into the landscape, so you don't get this giant kind of prison wall across it, right? So that there's actually activities on top of it. You don't even know that the dune's there. It's this long protective barrier. Um, and these are the different, we made this kind of connections toolkits, and these are the different connections. But I'm more concerned if we zoom in on kind of the area, there's an area of floodable parking lots. So if there's any overtopping, the the area can be flooded and just can't park there, right? And this is the actual clay core dune here. This basically this wall protecting any kind of storm surge from the ocean. And these are some of the kind of perspectives. If you're moving after you do your master plan, you're going to do some perspectives. So this is what we're kind of envisioning it looking like. And these are some of the kind of programmatic elements, functionality. So leakage detention, erosion control, recreational traffic calming devices, connected devices, all those kind of things. So some some interesting approaches of ways to show how the functionality of your designs. But if we move into kind of the transitional area, this is an area that's going to develop, right? We're going to do the same kind of thing. So in a 50-year flood, it'll cover 33% of the land. A 100-year flood, 82%. 150-year flood, almost all of the land. And then obviously a storm surge that's around 12 foot that's going to cover the whole thing, which is around $18 million in land value. But the dune will protect around $15 million worth of amenities behind it. So this is where I want to get into. Okay, so I'll show you this one in the urbanized area, and then you can look through the rest on your own. But so this is kind of a locator diagram of where this site is, right? And this is the transitional area here. we look at the current land use, it's mainly ecological with a lot of residential and commercial around it. Um, this is the current street hierarchy for the site and where the current buildings are. This is the actual designed land use that we put in. So it went from they want to develop the space. Here's the way we say we should develop it. We break down the percent of the different types of land uses here. Mostly ecological, a lot of mixed use and commercial off the main main artery right by the coast here, and then it gets less and less dense as you move away. So multifamily, single family back here along where these trails are. So if you looked at the 7 rules of urban design lecture, this is what I'm talking about. So the hierarchy creates the framework, the transportation hierarchy, and then the mixed use and commercial and higher density stuff's around that, and it dissipates outward as you move away. So this is the master plan. This is a master plan that we devised, and you can see that we don't just have big clunks of buildings on here, right? We have different diversity of housing types. We have clearly this is the main artery with this kind of main feature here. Uh, you can see that you can see a clear structural relationship between the land use layout, the transportation hierarchy, the building footprint arrangement, and all the different programmatic elements that are linking to it. So we have everything spelled out here and thought out, from between hiking trails to RV parks to piers to retail stores to fire stations. So we have institutional land uses, residential land uses, recreational land uses, and all these different connective options here, right? So it's a very detailed kind of master plan, and these buildings create spaces around them in which new functions can interact. So this is kind of the style of master plan you can create, and then you also need to do illustrative diagrams explaining what these how this what this master plan is, right? So this is kind of a spatial relationship of where the kind of buffers are, the transportation hierarchy, some of the land uses, all in one diagram, and then you break it down. So here's the transportation as far as the vehicular access goes. So you clearly see the hierarchy of the streets. Main artery, we have secondary arteries, and then connector streets and smaller scale kind of maintenance and access. And again, if you refer back to the 7 rules of urban design, and this is all the pedestrian access. So a lot of go back, right? A lot of the streets are actually have sidewalks on them, so they are also pedestrian circulation, but there's also internal trails that can't be driven on. Clearly, this area along the pier and on the beach side has a lot of pedestrian connection. And we put there's a lot of hiking that goes on in this marsh area, so we put in a lot of trails, and we even kind of did 1 mile, 2 mile family trails. We designated them how long they are, and we gave them kind of themes. So it could be an interesting way to do ecological areas if you want them recreational, right? So here's the new building footprint. You clearly, again, you see the hierarchy and the land use layout all in the building footprint. And I want you to look that it's not just a bunch of the same buildings stamped over and over and over 20,000 times. Some of them are repeated a few times, but there's a variation in building footprint types, right? And there's some unique buildings, there's some kind of space creating buildings, there is some single family repetition, right? And then there's obviously the ones that are already there we try to retain, right? And we even did 1 story, 2 story, 3 story, 4 story, even though it's misspelled, kind of diagram here. So you can again see the density changes in the hierarchy as well. And then the rest of this stuff's kind of just connection based stuff. That's what's specific to our problem. So you can do diagrams specific to your problem. So we create a hierarchy of connections and internal, secondary, private residence connections, those kind of things. We do some section drawings saying how much space the dune's going to take up, and then some of these kind of integrative options that I showed you earlier. But I want to kind of get to this is the connections of how you can connect to existing houses, but it's things like slides and handicap access, those kind of things. But that's the transitional area, right? And then we do the same thing about the functionality on these perspectives as well. But I want to show you this urbanized area as well. So this is the same kind of setup. So I hope you're learning from what we're doing here. I'm going to kind of skip through some of these analytics. You can look through them on the PowerPoint, but um, this is the urbanized area. The current land use of it's kind of this commercial pocket with the, oops, sorry, a residential, kind of linear residential space between the coastline and the commercial area, and kind of a dendritic pattern of hierarchy of transportation, right? Very scattered commercial development and residential development. So they wanted, their plan says this area should be kind of a new kind of downtown area. So this was our new land use. Again, clean drawings, high resolution. This is the new land use. We have the broken down into percentages. We have the same kind of thing with a multifunctional set of different building types. This one, there's actually a planned resort in the middle, so the hierarchy is a little broken up. But if we look at, again, we have clearly labeled out of all the different programmatic elements we want to do. Here's the transportation hierarchy and all the major nodes that we're trying to create. And around those nodes, we create major buildings, points of interest, destinations, chains of destinations. Again, see the 7 rules of urban design lecture that I gave. And this is the new street hierarchy. So really around this kind of middle resort area, right, is this where we're putting a bulk of the kind of denser developments. And within this area is where the resort kind of is laid out. So kind of a different approach, but the same principles and theories apply. And then there's a pedestrian circulation. There's the new buildings. You clearly see this is a main thoroughfare. This becomes a thoroughfare because of this main piece in the middle as well. Another density map. So the higher densities are always closer to the water here and those connections across right here. And we even did a parking diagram here. We see how we broke up the parking into different options. And there's not just one, 7 different giant parking lots, but there's private parking, there's street side parking, there's parallel parking, there's rooftop parking, ground parking, parking lots, parking gardens. So there's a variety of different parking options, right? And again, here's what the dune looks like. We have use the same wedges that we did earlier and put the section on them. So anyways, I wanted to show you those, and there's a series, these are different drawing types and perspectives that you can do. Take a look at the rest of these on your own. They're kind of repetitious, but it's they give you really good examples of master plans, bird's eye diagrams, perspectives, functionality diagrams on top of perspectives that you can do. And don't be afraid to replicate it. So at the end of this lecture, you'll also see, and the PDF is on eCampus, but you also see a lot of, I guess we just put a bunch of examples of master plans that you can steal ideas from. So you have to make a master plan. So steal some, I really love the shadows on this one and how they make it pop. A lot of variety, and this is more of a kind of hand-drawn style you can do. Bird's eye view. Again, we gave you a 3D model so you can kind of create your own, use your master plan to create a bird's eye view. And here's another example of bird's eye view. This one's a little pixelated, but I think you get the gist of it, kind of a Photoshop based one. This is one that we did actually at Texas A&M a few years ago, ASLA award winner with a bird's eye view. So you can take a look at these other examples and steal ideas from as well. So hopefully this helps you and gives you a good path moving forward of some ideas to steal.